The gavel cracked and the room went still. Judge Eleanor Hayes lifted her eyes for the next case, expecting a routine morning. The bailiff called out, "The state of Louisiana versus James Anderson." A man in shackles stepped forward. He raised his head. She knew those eyes. Dusty summer streets flashed in her memory. A magnolia tree. 2 kids making promises to watch out for each other. Now he stood at the defense table, older, thin, and tired. Eleanor kept her voice steady. "Mr. Anderson, how do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor." The prosecutor rose with a neat stack of notes. The defense lawyer stood calm but tense. Reporters leaned in. Jurors watched every move. Eleanor felt the bench under her hands, cool and solid, as if it could hold back the past. The charge was assault and robbery. The video, they said, showed a figure in a red hoodie. The clerk had been hurt. Cash was gone. The case seemed simple, but nothing felt simple now. Eleanor breathed once, slow, and said, "Proceed. Part 7. Expanded. 750 words, no heading." The evening after the verdict, Eleanor left the courthouse after everyone had gone. The steps were warm from the day and the sky dimmed to a soft blue. She walked to her car without hurry. Each step felt like a choice. For years she had trusted that fairness came from strict rules and calm tone. After this trial, she understood something else. Fairness also needed light, questions, and the courage to change small things that shape big outcomes. The next morning, she asked her clerk and bailiff to meet early. She spoke simply. They would create a checklist for cases that relied on eyewitness accounts. Distance from the event, lighting, how long the witness had to see the person, whether stress or fear could have changed memory. The list would sit on the bench in plain sight. Whenever a witness took the stand, she would walk through it. Not to shame anyone. To make the record clear, they built another list for video evidence. Every clip brought to court would need chain of custody notes and a short description of the camera's limits. Was the angle high or low? Did the lens warp height? Was the timestamp steady or jumpy? If facts were fuzzy, they would say so out loud. No more guessing in the dark. She started something new on Fridays. Resolution Day. The sign at the door said, "Fines, missed dates, and old warrants, and come talk to us." Public defenders sat at folding tables. A social worker brought forms for job training and housing help. People lined the hallway. Some were nervous. Some were angry. Most were just tired. Eleanor listened. She spoke softly and used short sentences. She did not promise miracles. She promised a path. The room felt different by noon, like a tight knot that had loosened. She also invited a group of officers to the courthouse conference room. She set out coffee and notepads. No podium, no speeches. She asked them to tell her what made their jobs hard. They said hours were long, calls stacked up, and some blocks felt like powder that could spark at the smallest touch. She thanked them for their honesty. Then she shared what it felt like in court when an arrest was based on a thin description. She talked about the red hoodie no one looked for and how a quick guess can harden into a charge. One sergeant asked for copies of the new checklists. Another said he could try a small area search policy on his shift. A third stayed quiet but took notes to the last page. That was enough for a start. News moved on to other stories, but word spread in simple ways. A clerk taped a new map behind the counter to explain where to go. A sign in the hallway showed how to ask for a public defender. The bailiff began each session by telling people what would happen that day, step by step. The courtroom felt less like a wall and more like a door. James did not celebrate after the verdict. He slept for a long time and woke to a quiet apartment. The fear had left a mark, the way heavy rain leaves a line on a wall. He needed work, so he called a man who fixed old houses. The pay was honest. The hours were steady. He liked the simple rules of wood. Measure twice, cut once. Take off a little. Try the fit, take off a little more. A stuck door could close smooth if you had patience and cared. Some days were still hard. People who had read the headlines stared too long. A shop owner watched him like a shadow. On a bus, a kid asked if he was that guy from the trial. James said yes and then said he was working now. The kid nodded like he understood more than most adults. That small nod carried James through the week. One Friday, he stood in a hallway at the courthouse holding a folder. He had a question about an old fine that kept blocking a job application. A volunteer pointed him toward the room with the folding tables. He waited his turn. When he reached the front, the clerk smiled and asked for his papers. The clerk checked the system and said the fine could be reduced if James joined a short class on money rules and brought a note from his boss. It was not a free pass. It was a clear path. James thanked him and left with a list and a date. He did not see Eleanor that day. He did not need to. The room spoke for her. A week later, a window jammed on a second-floor apartment near the creek where he used to go as a boy. James climbed the old stairs with his tool bag. The frame was swollen and warped. He marked the edges, shaved the wood, and tested the slide. It stuck. He shaved again. This time the window moved easy and stopped with a clean click. He stood there a moment, hand on the glass, and felt the small joy of a simple fix done well. On Sunday afternoon, he drove to the creek. The water ran shallow and the magnolia tree spread its branches over the path. He walked slowly, letting the quiet settle in his chest. He was not surprised to see Eleanor. She stood a few yards away, hands loose at her sides, no robe, no bench, no distance. Just a person out for air. They greeted each other without fuss. They walked along the path and talked about plain things first. Weather, work, old houses that needed care. She told him the checklists were in use. She said resolution day was busy but hopeful. He smiled and said forms were not nothing. Forms could point a person in the right direction. They reached the magnolia and stopped. The light fell through the leaves in soft patches. Eleanor said she was sorry for the porch years ago. James said he was sorry for letting silence grow so big. Neither of them tried to fix the past with large words. They let the wind move through the branches and carry some of the weight away. When they turned back toward the road, James spoke first. He thanked her for holding the room steady when it mattered. She thanked him for telling the truth when it was hard. They did not promise to meet again on a schedule. Life would not hold that tight. But they knew they lived in the same town under the same tree, working on different parts of the same problem. On Monday, Eleanor returned to the bench. She touched the checklist, called the docket, and looked each person in the eye. On Monday, James returned to the house with the old door that would not close. He shaved another thin line of wood, tried the hinge, and felt the latch catch with a soft, certain sound. Both of them kept going, patient and steady, making small changes that opened and closed the right way. They met by accident at the creek behind the last row of houses in Hammond. Eleanor had followed a chalk blue butterfly past her yard and lost sight of the fence. James was sitting on a flat rock with a fishing line wrapped around his fingers. The hook was stuck in a cluster of reeds. He tried to hide the trouble, but the line bit his thumb and he winced. She knelt, pinched the knot, and loosened it with a patience she did not know she had. When the hook came free, he looked at her with shy surprise and said thank you like it was a new word. That was the start. Their town had 2 maps. One map was on paper with street names and bus routes. The other map lived in people's heads. It told them where to sit, who to greet, and when to look down. On that second map, kids like Eleanor did not walk to the creek alone, and kids like James did not sit on porches with white fences. But children make their own roads when no one is watching. They met again the next day and the day after. They traded treasures that only children value. A smooth green marble, a nickel with a dent, a pencil with bite marks, and a clean eraser. They learned each other's small skills. He showed her how to fix a loose bike chain with a stick and a steady hand. She showed him how to get a library card without an adult if you asked the right librarian with the right smile. He brought her to a fruit stand run by an old farmer who sold crooked oranges cheap. She brought him to the schoolyard after hours and taught him lines from the school play. He spoke the words slow at first, then stronger, and laughed when he got them right. They built a secret place under the magnolia tree in her yard. It was a big tree with wide branches, leaves that felt like soft leather, and flowers that opened like cups. They laid a blanket on the dirt and called it the quiet spot. There they made promises that felt serious even though they were only 10. They would protect each other. They would leave Hammond one day. They would not let other people tell them who to be. The town did notice. People always do. Grown-ups whispered names that did not belong to children. Some neighbors stopped waving at Eleanor's mother. Men at the corner store watched James with a hard stare when he came in for milk. The pressure built like summer heat before rain. But the children kept meeting. The creek was a teacher. It taught them that water always finds a path around rocks. One fall afternoon, a boy from Eleanor's class saw them walking by the tracks and told everyone the next day. A teacher's mouth tightened when she looked at Eleanor. A coach told James he should practice after school on the far field and keep his eyes on the ground. They tried to follow those rules. It made everything smaller and sadder, so they stopped. They went back to the Magnolia and promised to be brave. They were 11 and thought bravery meant quiet stubbornness. Sometimes it does. The last summer before high school, a storm knocked down the power across 3 blocks. Families sat outside because the houses were too hot. The air tasted like metal and rain. Eleanor's father found her and James talking on the front steps. His face was calm in a way that felt colder than anger. He told James to go home. He told Eleanor to come inside. His voice left no room for questions. James stood like a fixed post. He nodded once at Eleanor and stepped off the porch. She followed her father into the house. The door clicked shut. A thin final sound. It echoed in her chest for years. He did not come back to the porch. Word spread that his family would move to a smaller town where his uncle had work in a mill. Eleanor watched the street on moving day from behind a curtain. A truck door slammed. A couch bumped a doorframe. A woman cried and then stopped. The truck pulled away. Dust rose and drifted. The street was empty. The house at the end of the dirt road looked like it had exhaled. Eleanor tried to write a letter. She wrote 3 lines and tore it up. She wrote again and could not find an address. She started to run each morning before school. Then she studied until late. She told herself that good grades could turn into good rules. She told herself that the law could hold people steady, the way the bench would one day hold her. She learned to use quiet as a tool, not a wound. James tried to stay in one place after the move. He found work at a hardware store and learned how to match paint and cut keys. He missed the library. He missed the Magnolia and the creek. He missed being seen as a boy with a mind and not a shadow in a doorway. He slipped sometimes. Small things. A missed shift. A bad friend. A night with too much noise. He got back up and kept going. The second map did not leave him alone. It followed him like a chalk line that others drew around him without asking. Years passed. Eleanor went to college, then law school. She did not talk about Hammond much. She talked about case law and evidence. She talked about structure. She learned that a courtroom has its own weather. It can be cold and bright and fair, or it can be foggy if no one opens a window. She took her oath with a clear voice. She put on the black robe. People called her Your Honor, and she felt the weight of that title in her hands like a heavy book. She promised to read it carefully. James learned to work with wood and windows and door frames. He liked the feel of a true line. He liked making stuck things move. He liked when a stranger said thank you like it was a new word. Some weeks were steady, some were not. He was not a headline. He was a man trying to live inside the narrow lanes that other people marked for him. When the lanes pinched, he looked for a shoulder. Sometimes there was none. They did not see each other for a long time, but the past never leaves. It waits in ordinary places. A street corner, a bench, a file folder. The day he walked into her courtroom, shackled and tired, the quiet spot under the Magnolia opened in both of their minds. He looked up and saw the same eyes that had loosened a fishing line without judgment. She looked down and saw the same boy who had learned her stage lines and said them true. The years between them felt both loud and thin. The room held its breath. Outside the courthouse, a magnolia somewhere in Hammond dropped a single white petal onto the ground. It made no sound. Inside, the law prepared to speak. The prosecutor stood, buttoned his jacket, and faced the jury like a teacher with a clean board. His voice was steady. He laid out a clear line of time. At 9:42 p.m., a corner store on Florida Boulevard in Baton Rouge called 911. The clerk said he had been pushed and the register was emptied. A man in a red hoodie ran out. Minutes later, officers found a man 2 blocks away. That man was James Anderson. He turned and pointed to the witness stand. The clerk took his oath and sat down. He was thin with a bruise fading along his jaw. He gave his name and the name of the store. He said it was a normal night until it was not. A customer argued about the total. Voices rose. The customer reached over the counter. The clerk tried to push him back. He felt a shove. He hit the soda case. By the time he stood up, the register was open and bills were gone. "Did you see the person's face?" the prosecutor asked. "Not full on," the clerk said. "The hood was up. The light near the door flickers. I saw eyes, maybe. I saw a jawline. I saw a red hoodie." "Are you sure about the hoodie?" "Yes," he said. "Bright red. Do you see the person in the room who did this?" The clerk looked across the courtroom. He hesitated. He looked down at his hands. "I cannot say for sure," he said at last. It happened fast. The prosecutor nodded as if he had expected that. He walked to the evidence card and wheeled a small monitor closer. He pressed play on a surveillance clip. The video was silent and gray. A figure in a red hoodie stepped into the frame. The person moved quick, leaned over the counter and yanked. The clerk stumbled back. The frame cut at a bad angle. In the next frame, the door flapped open and the red hoodie flashed past the camera. On the bottom, a timestamp ran in small white numbers. The prosecutor paused the screen and turned to the jury. "You can see how close the camera is to the register," he said. "You can see the hoodie. You can see how quickly this happened." He let the still image sit there for 2 long breaths. Then he clicked stop. He called the store manager. She brought a short report that said the drawer was short by a little over $300. She explained the closing routine and how the count is written down at the end of each shift. Her voice was businesslike. Her hands were steady. Next came a paramedic. He had treated the clerk at the scene. He talked about a bruise, a strained shoulder, and a small cut near the ear. He said it was consistent with someone being pushed into a hard surface. He did not add more. He did not need to. His job was to speak about bodies and what had happened to them. The prosecutor then called Officer Daniel Harris, the arresting officer. Harris sat broad-shouldered in the chair and looked straight ahead. "Tell the jury how you came to stop the defendant," the prosecutor said. "We got a call and a description," Harris said. "Male, medium build, hoodie. We drove a slow grid. 2 blocks away we saw a man walking quick, like he was trying not to look quick. He put his hands in his pockets when we slowed. We asked him to stop. He did. What happened next? We asked his name. He gave it. We asked what he was doing. He said he was walking home. His pockets were full. He said he had cash from odd jobs. We patted him down. We found a roll of bills and loose ones, around 200 in one pocket and more in the other, about 280 or so altogether. Any other items? A receipt from a nearby gas station for a soda. No weapon. Why did you arrest him? He matched the description. He was close to the scene. He had a lot of cash. We detained him and brought him in. Did he say anything? He said he did not do it." The prosecutor thanked him and moved to the evidence tech, a quiet man with careful hands. The tech explained how the cash from James's pockets had been counted and sealed. He said the store did not record serial numbers, so there was no way to match bill to bill. He said the countertop at the store had smudged prints from many hands. None were clear enough to call a match. He did not raise his voice or lower it. He gave the facts the way you hand someone a wrench in the right direction. Then the prosecutor called a neighbor who had been near the corner store. She said she had seen a person in a red hoodie run past her car. She heard the clerk shout from the door, "Hey, and stop." She did not see a face. She saw the color and the motion. She sat with her purse in her lap and answered each question like she was stepping across small stones in a stream. The prosecutor kept the rhythm slow and even. He did not push the clerk to make an identification he could not make. He did not promise more than he could show. He used the pieces he had and held them up one by one. He ended with a short, tight path. The call at 9:42 p.m., the video of a red hoodie inside the store moments before. A neighbor sees a red hoodie running. 2 blocks away, officers stop a man with a lot of cash and no clear reason for it. The man is James Anderson. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the jury, "you do not need perfect proof. You need solid, honest proof that makes sense. The timeline makes sense. The movement makes sense. The money makes sense. Use your common sense." He sat down. The room breathed again. Reporters scratched lines into their pads. Someone coughed near the back. A juror reached for a cup of water and did not drink it. On the bench, Eleanor kept her face calm, but her mind stayed busy. She had watched 100 openings and 100 neat stories. This one had clean edges on the outside. Inside it had seams. The clerk could not say the face. The video had a bad angle. The cash had no mark. The neighbor saw color and speed, not a person. The officer followed a routine many officers follow on many nights in many cities. Routine can keep people safe. Routine can also make people invisible if no one checks its corners. Eleanor looked down at James. He sat still with his hands folded. His eyes did not move much. When the red hoodie showed on the monitor, he did not flinch. When the clerk spoke about the shove, his jaw set tight, then eased. He looked like a man trying to be small in a room that made him feel too large. She glanced at the defense table. Lisa Porter, the defense attorney, had a yellow pencil and a notepad covered in small squares. She had drawn boxes around certain words as the state spoke. Hoodie, distance, flicker, no cereals, no face. She tapped the pencil tip twice as if testing a hinge. Courtrooms are made of wood and rules, but they are also made of moments. A pause before a question. A look that lasts 1 second too long. A juror's head tilt when something does not land. Eleanor felt the moment turn now, very slowly, like a door on old hinges that has just been oiled. The prosecutor rested his case for the day's witnesses. He gathered his notes into a square stack. The state's story stood on the table like a careful model. It was simple. It might be enough. It might not be. Eleanor nodded once. "Counsel," she said, looking to the defense. "You may cross." Lisa rose, smoothed the corner of her notepad, and walked toward the center of the room with the quiet focus of someone who fixes small things first to reveal the larger break. The jurors leaned forward by an inch, the way people do when they sense that the easy part is over and the harder questions are about to begin. The prosecutor's story rested on red fabric, vague memory, and loose bills. It looked neat until the defense stood up. Lisa Porter walked slowly to the center, a yellow pencil in her hand. She had a calm voice that carried well, not loud, but firm enough to reach the back row. Her first questions went to the clerk. "You told the jury the man wore a red hoodie?" "Yes." "Did you see his face clearly?" "No, not clearly. The hood was up." "How long did you see him?" "Maybe a few seconds. Enough to know it was my client?" The clerk's eyes dropped. I can't say for sure." Lisa nodded once. She did not press. Jurors scribbled small notes. Next, she faced the arresting officer. His shoulders were square, his jaw set. She asked gently at first, then sharper, one word at a time. "You stopped Mr. Anderson 2 blocks away?" "Yes. What led you to him?" He matched the description. "What description?" "Male, medium build, hoodie." "What color?" "Dark clothing." "Not red?" The officer shifted. "That's what we saw. He could have taken it off." Lisa leaned in slightly. "Could have. Did you search the area for a red hoodie?" "No. Why not?" "We didn't have time." The words hung in the air. "Did you find stolen cash in his pockets?" "We found cash." "Any marked bills?" "Any receipts linking it to the store?" "No." "So, officer, your arrest was based on a vague description, cash without record, and a guess about a hoodie that was never found?" He bristled. "I followed protocol." Lisa let silence stretch. "Protocol is not proof," she said softly. "No further questions." The officer's jaw tightened as he left the stand. Jurors shifted in their seats. Doubt once planted grows in silence. Then came the neighbor. Lisa asked, "You saw a red hoodie run past?" "Yes." "Did you see a face?" "No, just motion." "Could it have been anyone in a red hoodie?" The neighbor hesitated. "I suppose so." Lisa thanked her and stepped back. Piece by piece, the state's clean line grew cracks. The video showed movement, not identity. The witness saw color, not a person. The officer found money, not proof. Finally, Lisa turned to James's record. She did not hide it. She said, "Yes, my client has struggled. He has faced small charges before. Petty theft, loitering. But none involved violence like this. Not once." She paused and looked at the jury. "The past does not prove the present. Tonight we must ask, do you see certainty or do you see doubt?" Eleanor watched from the bench. Her face gave nothing away. Inside, her chest ached. The boy who once sat under the magnolia tree was now a man fighting for breath in a system that preferred speed over truth. She could not speak for him, but she could feel the weight of every juror's glance as they wrestled with doubt. When court adjourned that evening, reporters whispered about holes in the state's case. Spectators leaned close as James was led out. Eleanor tapped her gavel to close the day, her hand steady but her thoughts restless. Justice is meant to be blind, she told herself. But what if blindness is not enough? What if justice must also be able to see what lies between the lines? Court came back to order after lunch. The air felt cooler. The jurors settled in. The defense called a new witness. A quiet woman with wireframe glasses took the stand. She said her name and job. She analyzes video for courts and insurance cases.
She has done it for many years.
Lisa kept her questions plain. Did you review the store camera footage? Yes. What did you check? The timestamp. The frame rate. the lens type, the angle, the way motion is captured, the chain of custody. She spoke to the jury, not the ceiling. This camera sits high near the door. It has a wide lens. That lens stretches shapes at the edges. It can make a person look taller or shorter. The system records at a low frame rate. It also uses motion activation. That means it may skip moments when the picture thinks nothing is moving, then wake late. The timestamp is set by hand on this unit. It drifts each week unless someone fixes it. I see small jumps in the time code. That tells me the clock is not steady. Lisa nodded. Can you say that the person on the video is the defendant? The analyst shook her head. No, the hood hides the head. The angle hides the face. The lens and frame rate change size and speed. I can say the figure is roughly adult height. I cannot say it is this man. Could the height be off? Yes, by a few inches. Enough to matter. Is there any sign the video was changed by a person? No, I see no edits. I do see normal compression and motion skip. I do see a time drift. Those are system issues. The prosecutor stood to cross. He kept his tone crisp. You're not saying the video is fake. No, you are not saying the person is a different size than my client. I am saying the size is not clear enough to make a match. You cannot rule him out. I cannot rule in anyone from this video. He tried a different path. Do you know how often the door area is lit? She answered simply. The door light flickers. That affects how much the camera sees in that zone. He ended there. He had not broken her. He had also not moved her. Next, the defense called the store's maintenance contractor. A man in a work shirt took the oath. He said he changed bulbs and fixed outlets for the store chain. Lisa asked, "How is the light near the door?" It flickers. I have told the manager to replace the ballast. It is on order. When it flickers, that corner looks darker. Cameras hate that. Did you tell the police that night? No, no one asked me. It was a small fact. It landed like a weight. The defense then called the evidence tech again, just for a few clean points. Did the store record serial numbers for its cash? No. Did any print from the counter match my client? No clear match. Any red hoodie found? No. Lisa thanked him and sat for a breath. She looked at James. He gave the smallest nod. She stood again. The defense calls James Anderson. The room changed. Chairs creaked. A pen rolled and someone caught it by reflex. James stood and walked to the stand with slow steps. The chain at his ankle clinked once. He sat. He looked at the jurors the way one looks out a window. He swore to tell the truth. Lisa kept her voice soft. Tell the jury about your day. I woke early. I worked a half day with a guy who fixes old houses. We pulled a stuck window in a shotgun house. We sanded the track. We were done by late afternoon. He paid me in cash. I took a bus to see a friend. We watched part of a game on TV. I left after 9. I stopped at a gas station and bought a soda. Then I walked. Where were you walking? Toward my place. I cut across a few blocks. I like quiet streets at night. What were you wearing? A dark jacket. No hood, a cap. Not red. Did you attack the clerk at the corner store? No. Did you take that money? No. Why did you have cash in your pockets when the officer stopped you? I had been paid. Odd jobs. It was a good day. Lisa held up a receipt in a clear sleeve. Is this your gas station receipt? Yes. What time? He looked at it. A little before the call. I do not know the exact minute, but it was right before. She let that sit. Why is your friend not here? He is scared. He does not trust court. He does not like his name in papers. He said sorry. He said he could write, but he would not stand up here. Did you ask him to come? Yes. Did you ever own a red hoodie? No. Lisa's mouth set in a small line. Tell the jury what it felt like when the police stopped you. James took a breath. I have been stopped before. You learn to make your body small. You keep your hands where they can see them. You answer calm. You do not move too fast. I did that. I told them my name. I told them what I was doing. I said I did not do anything. They heard cash in a store and a hoodie. Then I was in the car. He looked at the jurors one by one. I have made mistakes. I have stood in lines I should not have. I have been broke and angry. But I did not do this. I was walking home with a soda and some dollars from work. That is the truth. He folded his hands and kept them still. The prosecutor rose for cross. He did not shout. He did not need to. You have prior charges. Yes, small ones. No violence. You say you were near the scene at the very time of the crime. I say I was walking in the area. I did not know about the crime. Until the lights flashed. You carried almost $300. Yes, wages and a tip. You cannot give us your friend in this room. No. And you ask us to believe you. Instead, I ask you to look at what is here and what is not, James said. Look at the video. Look at the light. Look for the hoodie that no one found. The prosecutor paused, then tried one more line. Why did you put your hands in your pockets when the patrol car slowed? Because I was cold, James said. Then I took them out when I saw them. I kept them out. The prosecutor studied him, then sat. For a long moment, no one moved. The judge's clock ticked. The air felt thick but not heavy. It felt like a room where everyone was finally breathing the same air. Lisa stood again for a few last questions. James, why did you choose to testify? Because I do not want my silence to fill with other people's guesses. Is everything you said true? Yes. No further questions. James left the stand. He did not look at the jurors. He looked at the floor the way a person does when the next step matters more than the last one. Eleanor watched it all with the same calm face she wore at every trial. Inside, she felt the old ache and the new duty sit side by side. The analyst had not saved James. She had simply turned on a light in a dark corner. The contractor had not cleared him. He had told the truth about a flicker that hid faces. James had not begged. He had spoken like a man who knew what it costs to be seen. The prosecutor asked to recall the clerk for a short redirect. He tried to shore up his line. You were hurt. You remember a red hoodie. You saw a person reach over the counter. Yes, the clerk said. All true. Do you want the jury to know you are not making this up? I am not making this up, the clerk said. But I could not see a face. I wish I could help more. That honesty helped no one's side and helped everyone's sense of the room. The court recessed for the day. People stood slowly, the way they do after a long movie that has them thinking. Reporters stopped at the hallway to talk in low voices. 2 jurors looked at the screen that showed the empty witness stand, as if it might speak on its own. James was led out through the side door. He did not look back. On the bench, Eleanor touched the edge of her gavel and felt the smooth wood. She knew what the law asked of her. Hold the line. Keep the rules. Let the jury do its work. She also knew what her life asked of her. See people. Ask better questions. Make space for light. Tomorrow would bring closing arguments. Then the jury room. Then whatever came next. Tonight, all she could do was leave the room better than she found it, and hope the truth had enough room to be heard. Morning light fell through the high windows like pale stripes. Everyone came in early. The jurors looked rested but serious. The prosecutor placed his neat stack of notes on the table. The defense set a single yellow pencil beside a small legal pad. Eleanor checked the clock, then nodded. Counsel, she said. Closings. The prosecutor stood first. He did not pace. He spoke like a person laying bricks, one clean line on another. At 9:42 p.m., a store called for help, he said. A clerk had been pushed. The register was emptied. A red hoodie was seen. Minutes later, officers found the defendant 2 blocks away with a large amount of cash. No job slip. No paycheck. No witness willing to appear for his alibi. Use your common sense. He pointed at the screen where a still image from the video showed the door and the counter. You saw what happened. Quick, direct, take the money, run. The door light flickers, yes. The angle is not perfect, yes. But the picture is clear enough to match the story. You do not need every piece to be perfect to see the whole. He paused and looked at the jury, one face at a time. The law does not ask you for absolute certainty. It asks for proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The pieces fit. The timeline fits. The money fits. The defendant was right there. He sat. His notes were still in a tidy square. Lisa rose slowly. She did not carry papers. She held only the pencil. This case, she said, is built on a color, a guess, a fast stop, and fear. She let that sit for a breath. You heard the clerk. He was honest. He could not identify a face. He said so. You saw the video. It skips. The door light flickers. The camera bends height. The expert told you the timestamp drifts. The neighbor saw motion and read, not a person. She took a step closer to the jury box. The officer did his job the way he always does. But protocol is not proof. No red hoodie was found. No area search for one was made. No marked bills. No clear prints. No face. She looked down at James for a second, then back to the jurors. My client told you where he was and why he had cash. He told you how it feels to be stopped again and again until your body learns to make itself small. He admitted his past. He did not hide. He told you the truth. She held up the pencil. Reasonable doubt is not a trick. It is the shield that protects every person in this room. If the state leaves you with real questions, the law tells you what to do. You say not guilty. That is not a gift. That is justice. She sat. The pencil rested across the pad like a small bridge. Eleanor thanked both sides and turned to the jury. Her voice was even and clear. The defendant is presumed innocent, she said. The state must prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Doubt must be reasonable, not imaginary, not forced. You may consider all the evidence and the lack of evidence, eyewitness certainty or its limits, video quality, chain of custody, and how the camera works. You must not guess. You must decide only from what you have. She gave the final instructions. She watched their eyes to make sure the words landed. Then the bailiff led them out. The courtroom deflated into a low hush. People stood, then sat, then stood again. Reporters changed pens. A man in the back checked his watch and shook his head as if time could be hurried by disapproval. James drank water with small, careful sips. Lisa said nothing. She just sat with him, shoulder to shoulder, steady as a fence post in wind. Eleanor returned to chambers. She closed the door and let the quiet hold her for a minute. She looked at the framed oath on her wall. She read the lines she already knew by heart. She did not pray. She did not pace. She sat. She thought of the creak in the magnolia tree. She thought of the porch door's soft click. She thought of the red hoodie no one found. Time stretched. An hour. 2. The bailiff knocked once to say the jury had asked to see the video again. Back in the courtroom, everyone faced the screen while the same gray images played. The quick lean over the counter. The clerk stumbling. The flash of red. The door. The video ended. No one spoke. The jurors filed out with lined faces and tight mouths that revealed nothing. More waiting. The room took on the smell of coffee reheated too long. James rubbed his thumb along the paper cup rim. Lisa told him a quiet story about a client who had cleared a traffic ticket and then brought her a bag of oranges to say thank you. He smiled a little at that. Small things, he said. She nodded. Small things. Late afternoon, the bailiff opened the side door and called the room to order. The jury had reached a verdict. Everyone stood. The jurors filed in and took their seats. The foreperson held a folded paper with both hands. Eleanor watched her face, not her hands. The face told more. Madam Foreperson, Eleanor said. Has the jury reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor. Please hand the verdict to the clerk. Paper changed hands. The clerk read it in silence, then passed it back. Eleanor nodded. Please stand, she said to James. He stood. In the matter of the state of Louisiana versus James Anderson, the foreperson read, voice thin but steady, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. There was a breathless second where sound did not exist. Then it came all at once. A few gasps. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, thank God. The clerk said, order. Eleanor tapped the gavel once and the room settled like dust after a heavy step. James's shoulders dropped. The air left him in a long, quiet exhale. He did not raise his hands. He did not smile wide. He wrapped both hands around the cup and stood still. Eleanor looked at the jury. Thank you for your service, she said. You are released. She looked at James. Mr. Anderson, you are free to go. The words were simple. They felt heavy and clean. Court adjourned. People gathered their bags and their opinions and flowed out to the hallway. Reporters tried to catch quotes, but most faces were turned inward. The prosecutor closed his briefcase and walked out without a flourish. He had lost cases before and would lose again. He had won more. He would be back tomorrow. Lisa touched James's arm and then stepped back to give him space. He signed release papers with a careful hand. The bailiff unlocked the last chain. The sound was small. It filled the whole room. James stood in the aisle, unsure whether to go forward or back. He looked at the bench. Eleanor did not move for a moment. Then she rose and stepped down 2 stairs. She stopped at the rail. She stayed within the lines. He approached. They stood a few feet apart under the same high light. "You don't owe me anything," he said, voice low. "I just want to ask one thing. You knew me. Why didn't you say so?" Eleanor held his eyes. "Because the case had to be clean," she said. "If I spoke, it could have hurt you. It could have hurt the process. I kept the room steady. That was the most I could do from here." He nodded, slow. "Fair," he said. He tasted the word. "Fair has never felt the same for me as it does for other people." "I know," she said. "I should have known sooner. I am sorry for that." He looked down at his empty wrists, then back up. "We were kids," he said. "We did what kids do. Then life did what life does." They stood with that for a moment. Neither of them tried to cover it with a lighter sentence. The truth had its own size. "If you ever need to clear an old fine," she said at last, "come on a Friday. There's a new program. We try to untangle things without breaking people in the process." He gave a half smile. "I heard," he said. "I might stop by. Not for me, for someone I know." "Good," she said. He took a breath like a swimmer before a long stroke. "Thank you," he added. "Thank you," she said back. "For speaking." He turned and walked toward the doors. His steps were steady. Outside, light lay across the courthouse steps like wide boards waiting to be joined. He crossed them and disappeared into the late day. Eleanor returned to the bench and sat alone. The room was empty now except for the clerk stacking files and the faint hum of the old air unit. She touched the edge of the gavel and felt the smooth curve. She thought of the word fair and how thin it can be when it is only a rule. She thought of what it might mean when it becomes a practice. She stood and gathered her notes. In the hall, a poster for the new Friday calendar sat crooked on the wall. She stopped and straightened it by a fraction. The frame clicked gently as it settled. Small things, she thought. Outside, the sky had gone the color of river water at dusk. She walked down the steps and made a quiet promise to carry into tomorrow. Keep the room steady, ask better questions, change what can be changed, and leave space for people to breathe. The verdict was over. The work was not. The weeks after the verdict moved in quiet steps. On Fridays, people started lining up early for resolution day. Some came with old tickets, some with missed court dates, some with nothing but a knot in the stomach. Eleanor kept the tone calm. "Sit, breathe. Tell us what happened." A public defender would find the file. A clerk would show a form in simple words. A social worker would circle a phone number. No one got a perfect fix. Many got a clear plan. The store chain fixed the flickering door light. The manager sent an email to thank the court for the checklist. It was a small note. It made the staff smile. The maintenance man who had testified stopped by one afternoon to drop off a box of new bulbs. He said the right parts had finally come in. He set the box on the counter and nodded to the bailiff like they were on the same crew. Officer Harris came to one of the Friday sessions in plain clothes. He stood by the wall at first, arms folded. He listened to a grandmother ask how to clear a bench warrant so she could get her grandson back in daycare. He listened to a young man ask if a broken taillight ticket could be paid in parts. He did not talk much. On his way out, he took 2 copies of the eyewitness checklist. He slid one into his pocket and kept one in his hand like a note to himself. The clerk from the corner store healed. The bruise faded. His shoulder stopped aching. One evening, he saw James at a bus stop. He hesitated, then walked over. He stood with both hands in his jacket pockets. He said he was sorry that he could not help more in court. He said he wished he had seen the face. James said he understood. He asked if the job at the store was still hard. The clerk laughed once and said hard days come like bus schedules, sometimes 2 at once, then a long gap of calm. They nodded. The bus arrived. They waved and went their separate ways. Lisa filed a petition to seal James's arrest record in that case. She gathered letters, a note from the carpenter, a list of hours worked, a class completion slip from a short budgeting class he had taken for the fine reduction. In court, another judge read the file and asked 1 or 2 careful questions. The order was granted. James folded the paper and slid it into a clear sleeve as if it were fragile glass. Work came steadier. The carpenter taught him how to set a door so it did not drag the floor in wet weather. How to shim a hinge so a latch met a strike plate without force. How to sand with the grain and let the wood do half the work. James liked the rhythm. He liked jobs where the customer stood in the doorway at the end and said, "That's right." He started to show a teenager on the crew how to measure twice and cut once. The teenager stopped making the same mistake. He started to smile when a window slid smooth. Eleanor kept her promises. She held round tables with officers and public defenders in the same room. They talked about field notes and body cameras and the difference between protocol and proof. A younger officer described an arrest where he had done a quick area search and found a dropped backpack that did not match the suspect. It changed the whole report. He said he might have missed it a year ago. Now it was a habit. Harris nodded at that. He did not take credit. He just tapped his pocket where the folded checklist lived. A new case came through Eleanor's courtroom that tested the changes. Another small store. Another quick push. Another camera with a hard angle. This time the checklists were filled out from the first hour. The officer documented the distance and the light. The store had fixed the flicker and logged the time. The video had a clear view of a tattoo on a wrist. The defense and the state agreed on the basic facts early. The case moved fast and fair. The wrong person was not pulled into the middle because a red sleeve looked like a red hoodie. Eleanor felt the room breathe easier, not because justice was perfect, but because the work had been careful. On a Sunday, the community center asked Eleanor to speak. She did not want a big event. She asked for plain chairs and a short program. She told the room that fairness is not only the absence of bias. It is the presence of good habits. She thanked the people who showed up on Fridays. She thanked the officers who searched the corners, not just the center. She thanked the clerks who explained things twice without making anyone feel small. People clapped softly. Someone brought a tray of sweet tea. The talk ended without fanfare. That was right. One morning, James received a call from a school counselor. A student had been skipping classes. He had been caught in a hallway fight and was about to be suspended. The counselor asked if James would talk to the boy for 15 minutes after school because the boy liked to build things. James said yes. They met in the woodshop. The boy kept his hands in his pockets and looked at the floor. James pulled out scraps and a small plane. He showed how to shave a thin curl from the edge. He handed the tool over. The boy tried it. The sound changed from scrape to whisper. His shoulders lowered by an inch. He asked how to make the edge square. James showed him a block and a pencil line. The boy made another pass. The line disappeared clean. They did not talk about the fight. They talked about grain and knives and how to keep a tool sharp so it does not bite you. Afterward, James sat in his truck with the window down. He looked at the magnolia leaves across the parking lot. He thought of the quiet spot in the yard from years ago and how a promise can travel a long way if you keep even a piece of it alive. Near the end of summer, Eleanor found a note on her bench. No name. Just a small envelope with a smooth wooden gavel inside. It was not fancy. It fit the hand. The handle was sanded to a warm satin feel. On the head, a tiny mark burned into the wood read, "Hold the room steady." She smiled at it the way you smile at a photograph you keep in a book, private and light. That evening, she drove to the creek. The magnolia tree still threw a wide shade. James was there first, standing with a paper bag. He lifted out a second gavel, a twin to the one on her bench, and laughed. He said the first had been a spare in case he ruined the finish. She held both, one in each hand, and said they were perfect. He shrugged like the work had done itself. They walked the path. The air was thick and sweet. They did not try to make the day larger than it was. They were two people meeting after hard months to say simple things that mattered. Eleanor told him about a new court form that used plain language on the first page and legal language on the second. He told her about the boy in the woodshop and how a pencil line on soft pine is easier to follow than a shouted order in a crowded hallway. She said that sounded like court. He said that sounded like life. They reached the spot under the branches where the ground was clear. The leaves made their own soft music. She told him she had spoken at the community center. He told her he had taken a short class in bookkeeping so he could give clean invoices. He held up a paper with a simple logo he had made, a small door with light on one side. She said it looked right. He said that was the point. They stood for a while without a plan for the next minute. It felt good. Then James cleared his throat. When I was in that courtroom, he said, I tried to be smaller than the room so it would not push me out. Now I think I can be my full size if I know where the lines are and I know who keeps them steady. Eleanor looked at the creek. The lines matter, she said, but they have to be drawn with care. They have to be checked. They have to bend a little when they meet a person who does not fit the old shape. He nodded. Like a door you rehang. Exactly, she said. He reached into the bag and pulled out a small block of wood. It was pale, smooth, and square. For your desk, he said. For wobbly stacks, she laughed. For wobbly days, they turned back toward the cars. The sun dropped lower. A breeze moved through the leaves and lifted the heat. On the path, they passed a family with a stroller, a teenager on a bike, a woman walking a small dog that tried to pull her toward the water. Everyone seemed to be heading somewhere ordinary. It felt like peace, not because trouble was gone, but because people had room to move around it. At the parking lot, they paused. If you ever need help at the Friday table, James said. I can carry boxes, or fix a sticking drawer. I'll call, she said. And if you ever need a letter for a contract or a meeting with a landlord, I can write one. In plain words, he smiled. Plain words are best. They did not hug. They did not make a big promise. They traded phone numbers like neighbors who might borrow a tool someday. Then they drove away. Monday came again. In court, Eleanor touched the wooden gavel and felt the quiet strength in the grain. She called the docket. She asked better questions. She made time for answers. In a workshop across town, James set a door so it swung true in any weather. He stood back. He watched the line between frame and edge stay even all the way down. He listened for the soft click of a latch that fit without force. The creek kept moving. The magnolia dropped a new bloom and then another. People walked, worked, argued, forgave, and tried again. Fairness did not arrive like a parade. It arrived like steady footsteps, like wood shaved thin, like a door that used to stick and now opens with a hand that does not have to push. That is how their story ends, and how the next part of their lives begins. With small, honest work. With rooms held steady. With doors that open and close the right way.